Support for I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere comes from listeners like you who support us through Patreon and Substack. Bonus material, thank you gifts, and more await at patreon.com/IHearOfSherlock and at ihearofsherlock.substack.com. And now you can enjoy some iHoes swag, mugs, notepads, and oval stickers, available in our store. Find it at ihearofsherlock.com/merchandise.
I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, episode 324, Sherlockian Road Tripping.
I hear of Sherlock everywhere since you became astronomer.
In a world where it's always 1895, it's I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, a podcast for devotees of Mr. Sherlock Holmes, the world's first consulting detective.
I've heard of you before. You're Holmes the meddler, Holmes the busybody, Holmes the Scotland Yard Jack in office.
The game's afoot as we interview authors, editors, creators, and other prominent Sherlockians on various aspects of the great detective in popular culture.
As we go to press, sensational developments have been reported.
So join your hosts, Scott Monty and Bert Walder, as they talk about what's new in the world of Sherlock Holmes.
You couldn't have come at a better time!
I'm Bill Curtis. This is I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere. Now here are your hosts, Scott Monty and Bert Walder.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bill Curtis. Yes, this is I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, the first podcast for Sherlock Holmes devotees where it's always 1895. I'm Scott Monty.
I'm Bert Walder.
And Bert, where are you off to today?
I'm off the deep end today.
You're off your game.
Treading water as fast as I can do it.
Well, let me throw you this lead balloon.
Ow.
Yeah, well, it is going to be an interesting episode because not only do we have some new features for you, or at least the announcement of a new feature, but we have two excellent guests, like the Bill and Ted of the Sherlockian world. We have Greg Ruby and Steve Mason, who engaged in the Great Whimsical Tour II in 2025, a Sherlockian road trip of sorts. And we want to talk to them about what went into that, but also about Sherlockian road tripping in general, perhaps leaving you with some ideas about how you might mount your own tour in your own neck of the woods. So it should be an interesting and fun conversation for all. We also, of course, have the answer to the last episode's canonical couplet, where we give you two lines of poetry and ask you to submit your best guess for what you think we might be talking about. It's anyone's guess what we might be talking about at any given moment, really. But in this case, if you recall, we had asked you, or we were giving you the opportunity to participate, and we were going to have I think an item from our vaults for people last time, since we couldn't give you a trip to Birmingham for Sherlock Holmes and the 12 Days of Christmas. So you want to stay tuned for that and participate in this episode's couplet as well. We're not going to send you on a road trip, but we will send you with something that would be handy on a Sherlockian road trip. How about that? So see if you can participate and win that prize. And of course, the aforementioned announcement coming up. What is it? Well, you'll have to stay tuned to be sure. And of course, if you'd like to support the show, you can do that on Patreon or Substack. We have the links to those ways to support us in the show notes. We are just I Hear of Sherlock on both of those platforms. And also, if you don't feel like doing a subscription support or a monthly support, we'd be happy to send you some Sherlockian merch. If you are interested in iHo's paraphernalia, we have mugs and notepads, and of course the 221B and 1895 oval stickers. You can find that at ihearofsherlock.com/merchandise. Also a link in the show notes as well. So could be a great thing for you to celebrate your support of the show, or you could give it to someone else who you think needs to know about the show or who just loves Sherlock Holmes. Oh, with that music, it sounds like we are marching into the month of February. My goodness, February 2026. And we turn to the Sherlockian calendar, and where does that land us, Bert?
It's the 1st of February. It lands us in Denver, Colorado, for Dr. Watson's neglected patients, busy filing their malpractice insurance, and they'll be meeting on the 1st of February in Denver. Derek Belanger is the contact there. You can find out more on dwnp.com. Dr. Watson's neglected patients, dwnp.com.
Excellent. Well, if you are also available for a meeting on February 1st, which is a Sunday, you can join the Norwegian Explorers. The theme that day is Baker Street West. Tom Gottwalt is the contact there, and you can find out more at norwegianexplorers.org.
And in Manhattan, February 4th is the first Wednesday of February, and so it's time for the Ash Wednesday dinner, and Shana Carter can tell you more.
And if you can't be in New York, but you still want to celebrate on that Wednesday, you can do so in Highwood, Illinois, the greater Chicago area, where the Bee-Speckled Band is meeting, and Brenda Rossini is your contact there.
And the indefatigable Anna Behrens on 8th of February in Keene, New Hampshire, is going to be gathering the Monadnock Sherlockians for another meeting.
And about as far away from New Hampshire as you can get in the U.S. Sherlockian world, Hawaii, on February 14th. It's a virtual meeting, so don't get your hopes up. You can join the Shaka Sherlockians of Hawaii for their virtual meeting. Joe Page is your contact there, and you can sign up for more and find out about their past meetings at shakasherlockian.com. Well, it is a short month in February, and we are only covering through Valentine's Day there because you love, love, love being part of Shaka Sherlockians of Hawaii. But we ask you, if you have more events to throw in the calendar, get in touch with Ron Fish at SherlockianCalendar.com. He'd be happy to add your events to the growing list of Sherlockian goings-on. Greg Ruby was introduced to Sherlock Holmes in The Adventure of the Three Garridebs in his 5th grade reading class, and it's the only thing he remembers from that fateful year. On Christmas Day 2013, Greg had been naughty and broke his ankle, spending the next 6 months in bed. During that time, he was only able to reach the Sherlock Holmes stories, which he had luckily rearranged to remove the Tom Clancy novels out of sight. Greg is currently the Harker of the Six Napoleons of Baltimore and is the SOB in charge of the Sherlockians of Baltimore. Greg received his investiture in the Baker Street Irregulars in 2019, Bulldog Pin with Ruby Eyes. Steve Mason has considered himself a Sherlockian since the first time he found his father's copy of The Hound of the Baskervilles at 7 years old. Imagine if it had been a copy of a more sundry magazine. He's currently the head of the crew of the Bark Lone Star Science Society, chair of the Communications Committee for the Beacon Society, and co-founder of the Baker Street Elementary comic strip. Steve received his investiture in the Baker Street Irregulars in 2021, the Fortescue Scholarship. Greg Ruby and Steve Mason, welcome back to I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere.
How are you doing, sir?
I am well. How are both of you?
Thanks for having me back after 8 years. It's very much appreciated.
I know. Well, what I was going to say is you guys are both repeat offenders. Steve, this is your 3rd time on the show. You joined us the first time in episode 183 to talk about the Beacon Society, and then again on episode 236 to tell us all about the Legion of Zoom. And Greg, I think you were with us just once before because you have learned your lesson.
Yes.
Talking about Sherlockian coin collecting in episode 128. And for people who are perhaps just joining us or trying to get caught up, we'll have links to those episodes in the show notes. So anyway, welcome back to both of you.
Thank you
for having us.
Sure. So we want to talk to you about this concept of taking Sherlockian road trips. You know, we all have local, or many of us have local Sherlockian societies near us, but then there are conferences and there are other Scion Society events that we wish to go to, and a lot of times people will put aside the lovely luxury of air travel because everyone just so loves doing pull-ups in the airport these days. And people will take to the road. And the two of you are inveterate road trippers individually, and you also came together for road tripping for the purposes of our interview today. But let's start with each of you and talk about your experience just road tripping for Sherlockian events in general. Steve, you want to kick us off and tell us a little bit about your history of being on the road?
I probably have put in more miles than most Sherlockians, including driving to New York and back for the BSI weekend every year since 2015. So this will be our 11th or 12th year to do that, of driving from Dallas, Texas to New York and back. This year we will drive to Dayton, Ohio for a conference, to Atlanta, Georgia for a conference, to St. Louis, Missouri for a conference, and then, like I said, New York. So I definitely do a lot of driving. I actually one time bought a gasogen from Jerry Margolin in Portland, Oregon, and drove to Portland and back straight through just to pick up the gasogen because I didn't want to have him ship it. So I definitely have put in some miles for Sherlockian trips.
Do you have a Sherlockian car dealer or something?
It's the Ford dealership here in Denton. They love to see me come back every 2 or 3 years and turn it in for another car.
That's amazing. So how many miles do you accumulate in that time period?
Well, for the New York trip, it's 24 hours up there and 24 hours back. So I think it's probably I think it's 1,700 miles each way, so about 3,400 miles round trip.
Wow. Now, this is the interesting wrinkle to this whole thing, because Greg, you have been on many Sherlockian road trips, and yet you don't drive.
That is correct. I'm the official co-pilot.
Well, everyone needs a good navigator, right?
Yes.
So when did you start doing the road tripping thing for events?
I did my first Sherlockian road trip in 2015 with Monica Schmidt in Chicago.
Of course, the legendary EDM soundtrack as you drive around. Are you usually allowed to touch the controls when it comes to music selection?
No, Monica doesn't like it. Neither does Steve. Steve is a big fan of I'm forgetting his name right now.
So I swore to Greg that I would not play a single song of EDM, but I did force him to listen to a few Barry Manilow songs along the way.
Yes.
I can just picture the two of you singing along together like Chris Farley and David Spade and Tommy Boy.
Yeah. Somewhere in rural Kansas, we had Sirius XM, so I decided to put on an EDM channel because I didn't even know what that was. Greg had to explain to me what that genre of music is. And I think we made it through 1.5 songs before I was ready to tear my ears off. So we basically listened for 5 days to 60s, 70s, and 80s music.
Well, that's a lot of fun. So,
and much better than EDM.
So tell us maybe about aside from the tour, which we'll get to in a moment, tell us about perhaps a memorable event or two on the road as you've had the experience driving with other Sherlockians.
Steve is a very good driver compared to Monica.
Ooh, you'll pay for that.
Yes.
So probably my most memorable trip was the second, I think, trip to New York. And let me back up. The first year that I drove to New York, I drove by myself and having no clue of what it was like to drive in New York City. And so I thought, I have a GPS, unit sitting on my dashboard. Shouldn't be any problem to find the Roosevelt Hotel. The moment I went through the tunnel, the GPS shut off because it couldn't pick up a satellite. And I had no idea where I was at. And I ended up, after about 30 minutes driving around Manhattan, pulling over and almost crying in a parking lot because I was so frustrated. A cop walking by saw me, walked over, asked me what was wrong. I told him I was totally lost. He actually got in the car and directed me on how to get to the Roosevelt Hotel. So I was so thrilled. So the next year, I convinced my son, Rusty, that he needed to go with me to New York City. And so that started our road trips every year going to New York City. And the first year, we got to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, Ohio, in the middle of a blizzard. So there was very few people there. And the next day, we drove to Cooperstown to the Baseball Hall of Fame. And we basically were literally the only two people in the entire Hall of Fame. So we had the entire run to ourselves.
Well, that alone is worth it. That's amazing. Yeah. I'm still astounded that you found a parking lot in New York City.
Oh, no. I don't remember what it was. Just like a vacant parking lot. I was shocked, but so.
Yeah. The week before it had probably been an office building. Yeah. So Greg, Steve, how do you put together your route? I mean, you mentioned the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. One might say, geez, these are not really on the way to New York City. And have you ever found any hitchhikers, any people who by the side of the road with a sign that says they're wearing deer stalkers, and the side of the road it says Yale Club or Bust or something like that?
Well, so the closest we've come to hitchhikers was last August. We drove to Reading, Pennsylvania for Denny Dobry's last open house and sale of the books for the BSI Trust. And we stopped in St. Louis and picked up Joe Eckridge along the way and took him with us, and then stopped in Winchester, Maryland, and picked up Greg Ruby and took him with us for the rest of the trip to Reading, Pennsylvania. So that's the closest to hitchhikers. And we only came close to kicking both of them out of the car once on the trip, so it wasn't too bad. But the trips to New York, like, we've kind of established a route for the certain, so like this year, so Saturday, we will leave Saturday morning. We will drive to St. Louis, and we will have dinner with members of the Parallel Cases of St. Louis and the Harpooners there. Spend the night in St. Louis. Sunday, we will drive to Columbus, Ohio, and spend the night with BSI member Cindy Brown. Monday night, we will drive to Reading, spend the night with Denny Dobry and his wife, and then Tuesday night, go to Morristown, New Jersey, and spend the night with Bob Katz and his son, and then Wednesday, make it to New York. So we've done that, pretty much that kind of trip for the last 7 or 8 years. So.
That's marvelous.
That's great.
Yeah. When I used to live in Boston and would go down to the BSI weekend every year, I would carpool first with Tom Francis, and then a few years in, we added Richard Olkin. One of my, I don't know if I should say fondest memories, but one of the memories I have that sticks with me the most is we're heading down, we headed down 90 and then picked up 84, and we stopped, at a gas station along the side of the highway, and I hopped out because Tom was driving. I wanted to pay for the gas, so I made sure I was the first one out. And I had this trick when there were gas pumps that, and Bert, I know you're in New Jersey, so this is going to be foreign to you since you don't pump your own gas. When there were gas pumps that did not have the handle that automatically set and let you walk away and, you know, would shut off automatically when the gas reached the top of the tank, for handles that didn't have that function, I would take the gas cap and shove it underneath the handle to kind of jimmy it open. And I did that. And, kind of walking around, all of a sudden I look over at the tank and there's gas spewing out of it. The trick did not work. So I ran up and disengaged it. I had gas everywhere, on my shoes, on my hands. I, went into the restroom to wash the stench off as best I could. And, Tom was... Well, first of all, Tom didn't want me to pay for gas, so there's already that level of annoyance. And then he was completely amused watching me getting drenched. We're continuing the drive, and we probably get down toward the Henry Hudson Parkway. And I turned to Tom at that point, and this is probably about an hour and a half, 2 hours later. I turned to Tom and I said, "You smell gas?" and he almost lost it at that point. But to us, the joy of being with each other on the way down to this event, sharing the excitement, and sharing so many other different parts of our lives was part of the joy of road tripping together. And I would imagine that each of you has had a similar level of experience with the people that you've ridden with as well.
Absolutely, yes. But I haven't had to ride with Monica yet, so I can't speak for Greg.
Well, Greg is not going to be. Yeah, Greg is not going to be riding with Monica anymore, so you may have an opportunity.
It's an opening. Greg, any?
I think Monica's very selective.
Yeah, she is. So, Greg, Steve, you mentioned that you started doing this in 2015, but
yes, sir.
But years ago, longer ago than that, you did the first one of these whimsical tours, didn't you? How did that come about?
I was actually not involved with that one, but yes, the crew of the Bark Lone Star in August of 2005 decided to do the first Great Whimsical Tour. There were 5 crew members that went on that trip, and it was Don Hobbs, Dean Clark, Brad Kiefhofer, Mike Miller, and Herb Lender. And they only had 4 places that they were going to go to, major places. And it was Watson, Oklahoma, to obviously memorize John Watson. Then Holmes Peak, Oklahoma, which is right outside of Tulsa, right on the suburbs of Tulsa. And it's a very small mountain. And then Sherlock, Texas, which is in the panhandle of Texas. And then there was a little bitty bar way down in Fort Davis, Texas, which is in the Big Bend country. So many hours away from anything else, that was called the Sherlock Outpost. And so they drove all the way down there to go eat at the Sherlock Outpost. And so they took this trip. I think it was a 3 or 4 day trip, and videotaped along the way. A lot of it's inside the car of just their discussions as they're driving from point to point.
Oh, that's great. And have you ever done anything like that? Sort of decided you wanted to go to a Sherlock pub in Chicago, or a Holmes and Watson restaurant somewhere? I mean, there used to be more of them, but there still are some.
Well, we had a couple of them in Dallas, and so I had been to both of those many times. There was one down in Houston that we used to hold a conference down in Houston every year when I worked for the government, and it literally was like 2 blocks from the Sherlock's pub down there. So I would go there every year. There was one in Oklahoma City that I had been to. There was one in Tulsa that I had been to. And then there used to be a string of restaurants, I guess, called Baker Street. And there was one in Tyler, Texas. So my wife and I, of course, had to drive down there for New Year's Eve one year and eat at the Baker Street restaurant. So, yes, I have found different ones around.
That's something. So when did you decide that it was time to resurrect the Great Whimsical Tour?
I think Greg and I first started talking about it around August or September of 2024. So almost a year before we actually did it. And I brought it up to Greg and I said, they did it in August of 2005. So we're coming up on the 20-year anniversary of it. And so it would be kind of neat if we could resurrect this tour. And so Greg and I did a lot of talking about, well, how many people do we want on the tour and where are we going to go and how long is it going to take and everything else. Well, I will tell you the first thing in terms of the people, we kind of just put the word out by word of mouth that we were going to do this. And we had several people show some interest. Greg and I voted them all off of the island because of some of the weirdest things. Keeping in mind, we're driving through rural Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, and New Mexico. Well, one person said they would only stay at Marriott hotels because that's the only place they had points. And so they wouldn't stay anyplace else. And as you can probably guess, there's not a lot of Marriotts in those rural areas. So that person was easily rejected. Another person said they only ate at vegan restaurants, which you can imagine. In the panhandle of Texas, there's just not a lot of vegan restaurants. So that person was out. The third person said, and there's no graceful way to say this, they had bladder issues, so they needed to stop like every 20 minutes to go to the bathroom. Greg and I suggested we would give them a bottle that they could use instead, which they rejected, so we rejected them. Because we said, there's going to be places, there will not be any place to stop every 20 or 30 minutes, so. And so we started weeding it down. And before it was said and done, it was just Greg and I left standing. So Greg was coming down to Oklahoma City for a national coin convention that he helps out with. And so he suggested that would be the perfect time to start the tour as soon as he was done.
It sounds like you may have the makings for commissioning a whimsical tour RV vehicle.
We talked about that at the beginning, but at the time gas was really expensive, and I don't know if I want to rent an RV and pay over $3 a gallon for gasoline and insurance and everything else. So once it came down that it was basically just going to be the two of us in my car, it was pretty simple just to take my car instead.
But next time you can have a rolling vegan restaurant with stops at you don't even need Marriott at that point since you've got the sleeping facilities.
Yeah. When the Great Whimsical Tour 3 happens, which will be in another 20 years, I think it'll be the geriatric tour. I don't know whether we'll be driving at all. We may have to have a limousine with a chauffeur.
Oh, no. You'll have a drive-it-yourself RV.
Well, that's true.
I mean, an automatic, an AI-driven vehicle.
Yeah, driverless RV.
Yeah, there you are.
It's called a train.
I'm sure those will work really well in rural Texas and New Mexico.
So, Greg, it sounds like you were complicit in determining your fellow passengers, but
you have no proof of that.
I'm sorry?
You have no proof of that. I've never been to anything.
Oh, how dare I assume? But given that this was in Steve's neck of the woods down in Oklahoma, Texas, etc. How much pull, how much say did you have in terms of how this was going to work?
I had very little. Steve likes to do his own thing, basically, and we're not listening. I was
going to say, I would say he had absolutely no say. he was literally just along for the ride.
Greg, blink twice if you need help.
He did pick a few of the restaurants along the way, and he picked a couple of the hotels that we stayed at. So he had a voice once we got on the road.
Fair enough.
Yes.
So the initial Great Whimsical Tour you mentioned had 4 destinations. How many did the Great Whimsical Tour of 2025 have?
Well, so there needs to be a little bit of an explanation to this. So when we first started looking at a map, Greg and I, and we started picking out the places that we wanted to hit, of course, obviously, we were going to hit Holmes Peak again and Watson, Oklahoma, and Sherlock, Texas. But then we started finding all of these other peripheral places that had a canonical connection. And so it was like, okay, how many of these can we actually find and either drive through them, or there was a few of them or several of them that we had to do virtually just because of time constraints. And we actually had some really bad weather for a day and a half. So there was a few places we didn't stop. So after all was said and done, we did dedications to 39 different locations.
Wow.
Along the route.
And what were your criteria for picking them out?
Once we had established the primary route that we were going to take, I literally just looked on Google Maps and expanded it so I could see every little bitty town along the way and see if any of them rang a bell that they had a canonical connection. And now there were some that we knew we were going to go to, and those were the ones that we asked other people to write dedications for. And so we did the virtual or the peripheral ones, and some of them we did stop at, but those, I wrote most of those dedications, and many of them were on the spur of the moment. It was like, oh, look, that could fit into the canon. I wonder what we could say about it. And so we just wrote up a quick dedication right there on the spot and recorded it.
So this is in true I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere form. You're basically out there on the road and seeing places, or putting it into your Google Maps. You've identified a place. Like, oh, that's canonical. So give us an example of what some of those might be like that aren't the obvious, Watson, Oklahoma, or Sherlock, Texas.
The two that are the simplest one. When we were in Watson, Oklahoma, we stopped at the post office, and it was on a Sunday, so it was closed. And we were going to do the dedication to Watson, Oklahoma there. Greg, you will have to remind me, who walked behind the post office and found the next spot? Was it you or was it Barbara?
When I was trying to make a break for it.
Okay. Anyway, Greg found a house behind the post office, and they had a sign in their front that naming the family, and their last name was Bradstreet. And it was like, well, there it is, Inspector Bradstreet. So we immediately did a dedication to Inspector Bradstreet and all the other inspectors from Scotland Yard and how well they worked together with Holmes, the canon. Another one, we were driving out in the middle of nowhere in Kansas trying to find a place to eat. And all of a sudden, we hit this massive fog bank. And it was just about dusk, or the sun was just going down. And so it was really eerie that all of a sudden, because Kansas is completely flat, so you can usually see for about 500 miles every direction. All of a sudden, we couldn't see more than an eighth of a mile any direction. And I mean, it literally just came on us. And so we obviously had to do a impromptu dedication to the London fogs and the fogs on the moors in the Hound of the Baskervilles.
It's a real pea souper.
That's right.
Yeah, and if you could have found a restaurant that served pea soup at that moment, it would have been kismet.
True. But so anyway, I wanted to mention, by the way, even though Greg and I completed the entire tour, we did have some co-conspirators that met up with us along the way. So Barbara Brannon and Kay Ellington, who are from even further west Texas, a little town called Spur, Texas, which is out in the Panhandle. They belong to the crew of the Bark Lone Star. And so Barbara thought this was the neatest thing in the world. And both of them, by the way, are journalists, and they publish about 3 or 4 local newspapers out there in West Texas. So they drove to Oklahoma City and met with us Saturday evening. And then they went with us Saturday evening to a couple of spots, all day Sunday. And then Monday, the last stop they went to was Sherlock, Texas with us before they had to get back home and actually publish their newspapers. So we had those two for a couple of days. And then in Tulsa at Holmes Peak, we met up with Dean Clark and Brian Wilson. Brian runs the Afghanistan Perceivers Society up there. And Dean was very helpful in getting the mountain name for Holmes in the first place back in the 90s, I believe, or 80s. So they met with us for the dedication at Holmes Peak. And then when we got to one of the other great spots, Moriarty, New Mexico, a gentleman named Rob Rousey, who has just started a society in Belen, New Mexico, came up and met with us for that dedication. So there were 5 of us in total at some part through the whole thing.
That's great. Now, as long as we are on the topic of dedications, somewhere along the way, you wrote to us and asked if the iHose team would be interested in penning a dedication that you could read at one of your locations. Right. And I immediately jumped on it and volunteered Bert.
And I will never forgive you for doing that. But and so one of the questions was, where are we going to do yours? Because what we asked y'all to do was, we thought, okay, since y'all host I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, where is one of the most remote places that we could find that you could say, I heard of Sherlock here? And we ended up...
Bert's canonical couplet answers.
Yeah. So in the state of Kansas, they have counties, just like most states do. Inside the county, they break them up into townships, which is just a regional area. And then they, of course, have towns and cities in these townships. In southern Kansas, there is a township called Sherlock Township. And it is named after a gentleman who helped put in the railroads through Texas and Kansas and Oklahoma. And his name was Sherlock. And so I thought we couldn't pick a better spot out in the middle of nowhere that we found someplace called Sherlock to have your dedication read about. I hear of Sherlock everywhere. So we could never find a sign or anything that mentioned Sherlock Township. So we ended up standing in front of a coal-powered power plant in front of a bunch of piles of coal to do the dedication.
A coal-powered dedication. I love it.
Yes.
And Bert, do you happen to have a copy of that dedication handy?
No, I don't. Oh, well, yeah. Yes, I do amazingly happen to have a copy of that.
Please grace us.
Well, yeah, what I decided, like Steve said, you start looking around where Sherlock Holmes is mentioned in one way or another, and it turns out there are a lot of places. So I decided, because I couldn't really narrow it down and decide, I just did a dedication that recalls a bunch of locations worldwide where statues of Sherlock Holmes are found. And here it is. Friends, it's strange, as you'll soon see, how Holmes turns up in odd degree. Not just in good old London town or Edinburgh he'll be found. His reputation has not crested. In Meiringen, he's sitting, rested. Though Moriarty planned his slaughter, Holmes never touched the foaming water. On Moscow's Smolenskaya Street, both Holmes and Watson's statues meet. There, knowing Russian Holmesians grin at Levanov and Solomin. Elsewhere in the Soviet sphere, this pair in bronze are both held dear. by Ekaterinburg's shopping mall. They keep an eye on shoes and all. With Watson there, the pair look knowing, as if they think sales could be slowing. Elementary, Holmes might say, your boots were bought in aisle A. In far Japan, you'll see him stand a tribute in this eastern land. He's there in bronze, in Kirizawa, a park where tourists pass the hour. And far away on dusty Mars, an instrument named Sherlock stars, sniffs for organics, checks for minerals, with the zeal Holmes saved for criminals. Yes, up on Mars, the Sherlock scans organics deep in reddish sands. No mineral hides, no trace too small. Holmes follows footprints, after all. From falls to malls, from earth to space, the great detective shows his face. His visage people still deploy. Yeah, even in Chester, Illinois. His fame is wide, not jurisdictional. It's proof this man is far from fictional. From Baker Street to lands afar, there's always Holmes, where'er you are.
Oh, bravo, sir.
I have to point out that Bert wrote this dedication for a person that lives in Texas who has town names like Cut and Shoot, or Oklahoma, where we have Slap Out or Frogville. And then, of course, in New Mexico, the famous Truth or Consequence, New Mexico, which was actually named after the game show. So all these names he came up with, I had no idea how to pronounce them. So being the smart person running the tour, I said, Greg, you're going to read this dedication.
Oh, boy.
Good.
Greg tried it twice before he gave up. And so I then attempted it, and I butchered, I think, every name. I do have to point out that Bert actually put the pronunciation for the town or city in Japan. It didn't help at all. I still screwed it up royally. So,
Well, that's okay.
Well, now, for the next time, people will have this recording of Bert's voice to take with them.
Oh, boy.
Really. I do have to say one or the other little neat, as we were driving along, just little tidbits, and I didn't figure this out while we were there. It wasn't until that night that we stopped at a hotel, and I was looking at the Google about this. So this Sherlock Township that we were in out in the middle of nowhere is actually very, very famous for something else. And I don't know if Scott or Bert have any idea what it is, but back in the 50s, I think, or 60s, there was a actual murder that occurred of a family, and it became immortalized by Truman Capote.
In Cold Blood.
In Cold Blood.
That was
those
there?
murders of the family happened in Sherlock Township, Kansas, in a little bitty town.
Goodness. I had no idea that's where it was.
Yeah. And then the other thing that was neat, right after we left there, and then when we found, obviously, the fog bank as we were trying to find a place to eat, Greg was using all of his wisdom on, Google and everything else to find us a restaurant. We found this little bitty town in Kansas, and it turned out to be a really neat place. The whole theme of it is Bonnie and Clyde, because they can't find concrete evidence, but there's enough people that believe that Bonnie and Clyde actually were there toward the beginning of their run, and that Bonnie actually ran a cafe there in that town. And so they had this restaurant that had all this Bonnie and Clyde memorabilia and everything. Well, that's neat to me because Bonnie and Clyde actually lived for quite a while right outside of Denton, where I live, in a little town called Lake Dallas. And one of their first holdups was here in Denton. So that was a neat connection.
That's great. Well, if you ever make it up to Detroit, you can visit the Henry Ford, which is a museum of innovation. And in there is a handwritten letter from Clyde Barrow to Henry Ford.
Wow.
Mr. Henry Ford, Detroit, Michigan. Dear sir, while I have got breath in my lungs, I will tell you what a dandy car you make. I have drove Fords exclusively when I could get away with one. For sustained speed and freedom from trouble, the Ford has got other cars skinned, and even my business hasn't been strictly, even though my business hasn't been strictly legal, it don't hurt a thing to tell you what a car you got in the V8. Yours truly, Clyde Champion Barrow.
P.S. It doesn't do well with stopping bullets on the side of a road in Louisiana.
But we know Watson drove a Ford in his last bow.
Yes.
And Steve, you mentioned you drove a Ford as well, exclusively Ford. So you're in good company.
Absolutely.
If you're going to do a road trip, do it in a Ford, Sherlockian road trip. So it sounds like, based on your imagination and your ability to kind of geolocate exactly where you want to go, you have a template of sorts for other people to engage in Sherlockian road trips in their own geographical backyards.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, once we had identified our primary route, which was to go from Oklahoma City down to Watson, Oklahoma, then up to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then over to Sherlock, Texas, then out to Moriarty, New Mexico, and Santa Fe, New Mexico, and then back. Then it was just a matter of just looking at the map and saying, what can we find that ties to this? And I'll give you just some examples. I mean, obviously, we went to one of the great ones we found was Sherlock Homes, Homes, mobile home dealer in Henrietta, Oklahoma. And they actually have silhouettes of Sherlock Holmes, plastered all over the place. And they have another one in McLeod, Oklahoma. So we had to go there. You have to do a dedication in Clayton, Oklahoma to John Clayton, who drove the Hansom Cab and the Hound. You have to do one in Darwin, Oklahoma, because Darwin is actually mentioned in the canon by Holmes. We had to do one for Mrs. Turner from The Scandal, because we were at Turner State Park for the falls there at Reichenbach. Baker, Oklahoma, obviously that was easy. We just found them all over. Stanley, New Mexico, you had to do one for Stanley Hopkins. Aurora, New Mexico, you had to do one for the steamship the Aurora from the Sign of Four. And then there were a few that were just really peripheral. Greg, the last night we were together, found a wonderful little hole in the wall in Amarillo called the Coyote Bluff Cafe to eat at that had a great hamburger. Well, coyotes were mentioned when they were out in Utah in the Study in Scarlet, that they could hear the coyotes howling in the distance. So,
Steve, how long did it take? When did you start and when did you end?
I left my house Saturday morning, and so technically the first hit was in Sherman, Texas, which is north of my house, because you obviously had to do a dedication to Sherman. The gentleman owned Toby in the Sign of Four. And so I started Saturday morning. I got to Oklahoma City and met up with Greg, and then Barbara and Kay showed up. And so we officially, the four of us, the first hit we made was in Oklahoma City. And we had a couple of fun spots there. The first one was Cattleman's Restaurant, which is in the stockyards of Oklahoma City. And we had to do a dedication there, and because this tied to the crew. The crew of the Bark Lone Star is 55 years old, and the first meeting they had was on November 6, 1970 in Fort Worth, Texas. It was at a restaurant called The Farmer's Daughter. Well, The Farmer's Daughter was actually owned by the same family that owned the Cattleman's in Fort Worth. And originally, the founders of the crew were going to have their first meeting at Cattleman's, but they couldn't get a spot on that Friday night at the restaurant. So they instead went to The Farmer's Daughter. Well, afterwards, they had a few meetings at the Cattleman's restaurant in Fort Worth. So we thought it was perfect to have the first real big dedication at the Cattleman's restaurant in Oklahoma City. So we did that. Then we went to a lighthouse on Lake Hefner in Oklahoma City. There aren't many lighthouses in inland United States, but there's actually a lighthouse there. So we did a dedication to the Beacon Society and lighthouses there. So
there are actually more lighthouses in Michigan than in any other state.
Can imagine.
For inland.
It didn't help the Edmund Fitzgerald very well.
It did not.
No. Well, they were all built afterwards, I guess. So how long did it take? And what time of year did you do this?
So again, we started Saturday afternoon, basically, and I dropped Greg off at the airport Wednesday afternoon. So pretty much 5 days.
Wow.
That's intense.
And what time of year were you doing this? When was this?
The very last week of August, I believe. So it was nice and cool. Amazingly enough, on Monday, there was a massive thunderstorm in the panhandle of Texas and the panhandle of Oklahoma. So it never got out of the 60s during Monday for us. So that was great. I mean, because normally it would have been like 110. So
got away easy. So, I mean, it sounds like all that's needed is a working knowledge of the canon, a pretty good geographical plotting system, and a hefty dose of imagination.
Absolutely.
Am I missing anything?
Well, and I think it depends on what your goal of the whimsical tour was. The original one in 2005. They literally just wanted to go to those 4 spots and just have a few drinks and just socialize and fraternize with the people around there and everything. And of course, if you know, every place they would try to go, somebody would know Don Hobbs. They even ran into somebody that knew Don in Watson, Oklahoma, I think. But I really wanted this one to be doing dedications at all the spots. And so I recruited, I think, 17 different people, or so close to that, or 18, to write dedications to either the locations or people. And just I wanted to make this, more of a memorial or a commemorative to all the efforts of everybody. So, for example, obviously when we went to Moriarty, New Mexico, we had to celebrate John Bennett Shaw and what they did there with their, meetings there at the Frontier Saloon. And so I had Don Hobbs write a dedication to that because he actually went to one of the meetings. Then we went to Santa Fe and to John Bennett Shaw's house, and Jim Hawkins wrote a wonderful dedication to John Bennett Shaw for us. Then in Santa Fe, since we were there, that's where John Lellenberg lived. And so Julie McCurris wrote a wonderful dedication and history of John Lellenberg for us. And just every place, that we could go to, we had all these people write for us, which was wonderful.
And when you stopped at these places, I mean, you described that you weren't able to even find the name of Sherlock Township posted anywhere. But in some of the places, did you interact with maybe a mayor or selectmen or owners of businesses? Did you bring them into the process as well?
Not really. I think the biggest one Greg and I did was when we went to Moriarty, New Mexico, and we were going to meet with that Rob Rousey at the Frontier Saloon at a certain time. So before that, we went to the library there in Moriarty, and Greg wanted to take pictures of all the different signs he could find in Moriarty. So we found a bunch of spots, but we did a dedication to Arthur Conan Doyle and his writing at the library. Well, it turned out that was their historical society too. So after we got finished at the Frontier Saloon, we went back to the Historical Society and talked to the librarian there and the lady that ran the Historical Society. They didn't know the first thing about John Bennett Shaw and what used to go on there at the Frontier Saloon. So we were able to fill them in on it, and we gave them a link to the John Bennett Shaw website and to the Crew of the Bark Lone Star website, and they really got a kick out of that.
Oh, superb. Well, Greg,
I will say, and I'm sure she's not going to listen to this, we did stop and talk to the lady that now currently resides at John Bennett Shaw's house, and she wasn't real excited with us to be there, so we didn't stay long.
I believe she now has a restraining order against Steve.
I believe it. I believe it. So, Greg, after having had this experience, knowing everything you know now, would you do it again?
Probably yes.
There's
only so much Barry Manilow you can take, though. That's the There will be a version of this tour next spring or early May for the great state of Maryland. The Whimsical Tour of the great state of Maryland will take place either the last weekend or the first weekend in April or the first weekend in May.
Okay.
And we have about 10 to 15 stops we can make there as well. So there will be another Whimsical Tour coming up since I did not learn my lesson.
That's great. Well, it's good to know that people will be kind of extending on this idea over time. And we do have a link that folks can check out from the crew of the Bark Lone Star, where the videos are posted, both from 2005 and 2025. So you can check out exactly what went on there and continue to get inspired to perhaps create your own whimsical Sherlockian tour in your neck of the woods. Steve, Greg, any final words of wisdom, words of caution, pleas for help?
I think the most important thing for me was the fact that anytime you're with somebody pretty much 24 hours a day for 5 straight days, you better be able to get along with them. And fortunately, I think the world of Greg, and I've always considered him a good friend. And so other than one slight dust up we had in Oklahoma because we were misunderstanding each other on what name of the town we thought we were going to, which lasted a couple of minutes. I was trying to tell him we were going to Tucumcari, and he thought we were going to Tecumseh, which is a town in Oklahoma. But other than that, I thought for 5 days we got along wonderfully. And so I would just tell anybody that wants to do this, make sure you pick your friends well, because you're going to get to know them very well if you're with them that much for 5 straight days or whatever.
True. And also expect to get some weird looks from people who are not Sherlockians when you're filming dedications outside of Waffle Houses.
Yes, we did a dedication to Waffle Houses in Moore, Oklahoma, and one of the homeless people that was outside the restaurant didn't understand what we were doing, but one of the servers actually came out and was willing to hold the camera for us while we did the dedication. So that was nice.
That's impressive.
And Greg, I did a painting of the original logo of the crew of the Bark Lone Star, which was actually basically a boat. And so Greg held that every place we went. And yeah, there were a few places that people were wondering why he was holding this boat in his hands, or a painting of a boat.
Well, it's not the first time that people have looked askance at Sherlockians.
Yes.
Well, we're used to that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both. I mean, this is fascinating. What a lovely little slice of the Sherlockian world you've shared with us. We talk to people all the time who have science societies that are dedicated to, like the Southamberland Waffleiers, for example, as dedicated Sherlockians dedicated to waffle houses, or Sherlockians who are miniature collectors. So this is another slice of how Sherlockians do things and just have fun with our little hobby. So thank you for sharing this with us here on I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere.
You're welcome.
Thank you, guys.
I think you were exactly right when you mentioned, and of course Steve and Greg talked about this too, the importance of imagination. I never would have thought of this, but it's a great example of looking around and thinking about, what are the links that I can find in these towns and these names and these places between them and the Sherlock Holmes canon. And it's amazing how many you can find even in your own town. And so it's a great idea for a road trip or even a walk around town or a contest or any kind of thing like that. I think it's just an inspired idea.
It's something of a curse that if you read the Sherlock Holmes stories too closely or become too intimately engaged with the details, you end up hearing of Sherlock everywhere. It's a cross we have to bear as Sherlockians, I guess. But, the idea of perception, intelligence, and imagination, this came to me once again, not that I'm perceptive or intelligent or imaginative, but I was watching Young Sherlock Holmes on its 40th anniversary earlier this month, and there's that wonderful phrase where the young Sherlock Holmes says to Detective it wasn't an inspector yet, Detective Lestrade, or maybe it was Sergeant Lestrade, a great detective relies on perception, intelligence, and imagination. Of course, Lestrade said, "Where'd you read that rubbish?" And Holmes said, "It's framed on the wall behind you." but these are the things that, we do perceive differently after we're affected by whatever it is, not just Sherlock Holmes, but anything we read, anything we take in and take to heart. And I like to think that those of us who are among the literate who enjoy Sherlock Holmes, we are intelligent. And my goodness, what active imaginations we see from people all over the world who are doing such interesting things with Sherlock Holmes, whether it's in groups and meetings, or it's in their creative output, or in just how they contribute to the world. It's a wonderful thing to be a Sherlock Holmes fan. Well, folks, you remember that the last time we were here, we bid a sad farewell to Madeline Quinones. She did a remarkable job over 32 separate entries covering 37 Sherlockian podcasts. So a real remarkable testament to Madeline's own creativity and perception that gave us that wonderful segment, A Chance of Listening. Well, we don't want to leave you high and dry, so we're pleased to announce that we have a new segment coming in January of 2026, when season 20 kicks off. We actually had a number of conversations with our guest, Christian Mongard, who joined us on episode 319. Well, Christian is a film critic by profession and has wonderful opinions about things. So we asked him to come up with his own segment for the show that's going to be called Examining the Pictures. And in true film critic methodology, we have a teaser.
I beg of you, begin an investigation.
Based on what?
Your imagination.
Hello, my name is Christian Mongard and I am a Sherlockian and film critic from Denmark, and I'm really honored to be given the opportunity to talk to you about films and Sherlock Holmes, two of the things that are really dear to my heart. Over the coming weeks and months, I'll be talking about films from all over the world. I'll be talking about short films, long films, animated films, pastiches, spoofs, faithful adaptation, comedies, thrillers, action films, dramas, gothic films, crime films, horror films, you name it, I've got it. And I'll be starting out with some of the films that have meant the most to me, both as a film lover and as a Sherlockian. And perhaps you're now asking yourself which are those films, and you'll just have to wait and listen.
It's adventure.
We've not a moment to lose.
It's excitement.
Marshal, look out!
And it's coming your way.
Well, that's exciting.
Oh, it's very exciting. It's beyond exciting. It's fabulous. Now we'll be able to focus, having spent with Madeline time focusing on the audio Sherlock Holmes. Now we're going to be getting into visual literacy and terrific visual cinema. I can't wait for this. It'll be great.
It's astounding it only took us 20 seasons to figure this out. Oh, those plucky strings, that means one thing. Of course, it's time for everyone's favorite Sherlockian quiz program. That's right, it's Canonical Couplet, where we give you 2 lines of poetry and ask you to discern which Sherlock Holmes story we might be talking about. Last time we were around here, we granted you this clue. That double line above the wrist most would not perceive. Still, Watson noted beads and fringe and plush upon the sleeve. Bert, I'm going to ask you, be gentle with me this time, which Sherlock Holmes story are we talking about?
Oh, that's easy. It's one of the espionage cases. It's about a spy who stole a secret international agreement and kept it in a cage with a little lovable yellow canary. It's the case Watson called The Adventure of the Naval Tweety.
Oh, suffering succotash. Wow. Yeah, that was one of your better ones. I don't know what that says about me, but sadly, no, that was not the correct answer.
No.
Oh, I know. But as luck would have it, Eric Deckers is at hand, and he says, Buldum. That's Turkish. I've solved it. It's the case where Sherlock Holmes is rescued by an Italian fishing boat with no memory of who he is or how he got there. He must fight to recover his memory and his identity, all while trying to evade agents seeking to kill him. It's the story Watson called A Case of the Bourne Identity. Except I may be confusing Arthur Conan Doyle with Robert Ludlum, which means this is just a case of identity. Yes, that is correct, Eric. My goodness. Thankfully, you redeemed yourself there. Well, we did get a number of people submitting entries this time around, correct entries, I might say. So that's always a good sign. So we're going to we're going to bring the big prize wheel out here and give it a spin as it goes around and lands down on number 35. 35, and that looks like it is Nadia. Oh, congratulations, Nadia. We'll have something for you in the mail. We'll reach out and let you know you've won, so you can track your winnings, and we can get them to you. And we will give our folks here a chance to win another prize from our vault by giving them this clue. The box of bricks suggested that the case was quite involved. This puzzle required an ounce of shag and cushions to resolve. If you know the answer to this episode's canonical couplet, put it in an email addressed to comment@ihearofsherlock.com with canonical couplet in the subject line. If we choose your correct answer from all of the entries, you'll win. Good luck. Oh boy, Bert, we are closing in on the 12 days of Christmas. And what is it, 8 days of Hanukkah?
8 crazy nights.
Crazy nights. 7 days and 8 crazy nights. Sounds like a script for a Hollywood film. Yeah. Any big plans for the holidays coming up in your household?
I'm sure there are, but this information... This information is only distributed on a need-to-know basis, and
tell Kathy I need to know.
I just have to wait and see what the alerts will bring.
Okay, well, be alert. The world needs more alerts.
We do.
Definitely true. Well, we're going to be on the road for a bit, traveling here and there over the river and through the woods, so to speak. But should be fun. Should be fun nevertheless. And we, of course, will still be here with Sherlockian content. Make sure you sign up for email updates on ihearofsherlock.com. We'll have text updates there as well as our podcast episodes that are coming out. Also, join us over on Trifles, our weekly Sherlockian podcast. We're wrapping up season 9 there, getting ready to head into a new season with Trifles as well, talking about things we've come across in the stories that might be of interest, and occasionally looking at past Sherlockian scholarship. It's always something interesting for people to dig into a little deeper. Meanwhile, we wish everyone here the compliments of the season, and thank you for joining us here on your favorite Sherlock Holmes podcast. In the meantime, I remain the always jolly Scott Monty.
And I'm the hyperactive Bert Walder.
And together we say, the game's a hoof. A foot.
Ho, ho,
The game's afoot.
I'm afraid that in the pleasure of this conversation, I am neglecting business of importance, which awaits me elsewhere.
Thank you for listening. Please be sure to join us again for the next episode of I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, the first podcast dedicated to Sherlock Holmes.
Goodbye, and good luck, and believe me to be, my dear fellow, very sincerely yours, Sherlock Holmes.